Season 2, Episode 78. This is A World Gone Mad. I'm Jeff Allen Wolf. I give my commentary on national and world news and politics. And there's a lot of stories out there, so we can only talk about so many. Have I got news for you? Judge gives Trump administration another day to turn over deportation information or invoke privilege. U.S. District Judge Judge Boasberg has extended his deadline for the Justice Department to provide the court with information about deportations the Trump administration carried out last weekend under the so-called Alien Enemies Act, an old rule from long ago, or decide if it will invoke state secrets privilege to avoid divulging the information. Now, Boasberg, ruling just before his self-invoked deadline of today at noon, extended his deadline until Thursday at noon. But Boasberg, who for a time presided over the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, said he was unsure at this time how compliance with his order of the information would jeopardize state secrets. If the DOJ decides to invoke the privilege, the judge wrote in a 4-page order, he is obligated to determine whether the circumstances are appropriate for the claim of privilege. Boasberg also pushed back strongly on arguments the Justice Department made this morning that it should not have to comply with his request for the information because the government believes he overstepped his authority last weekend when he sought to halt deportations of individuals under the Alien Enemies Act. The court seeks the factual information at issue in order to determine whether the government complied with the temporary restraining orders. Whether those TROs were legally defective or legally sound does not govern the compliance inquiry, he wrote. As the Supreme Court has made crystal clear, the proper recourse for a party subject to an injunction it believes is legally flawed, and is indeed later shown to be so flawed, is appellate review, not disobedience, the judge said. So the battle with Trump and the courts continues. Trump delays, Trump avoids. Trump says no, yet Trump says he will comply, and yet he doesn't. It's just bullshit games from Donald Trump, something he's done his whole life. Trump says he had a very good call with Zelensky today. President Donald Trump said his phone call today with President Vladimir Zelensky was very good. It's basically a phrase that he used about almost every call he has with any leader of any country. The call lasted roughly 1 hour, which much of the conversation focusing on his talk with Russia, Putin, on Tuesday. Just completed a very good telephone call with Zelensky of Ukraine, Trump said. It lasted approximately 1 hour. Much of the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs, Trump wrote on Truth Social. We are very much on track. I will ask Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz to give an accurate description of the points discussed. That statement will be put out shortly, he added. Now, the call is the first known conversation between Trump and Zelensky since the two leaders' blow-up in the Oval Office 19 days ago. This situation is so odd because Trump thinks it's easy to control Putin. How Donald approached the Ukraine-Russian war shows that Putin has played him successfully. Trump won't admit that he's in over his head. A very dangerous situation occurs when Donald makes up stuff during something or some event as important as this. No plans, no vision, just look at me. I know what I'm doing. I could handle anything, according to Donald. And the truth is, Donald can't. He has no capacity to solve anything. And having him in charge of our country just puts us and the rest of the world at massive risk. The Fed holds interest rates steady as it tries to figure out the Trump economy. Now, the Federal Reserve said Wednesday it is keeping interest rates at current levels, but warned of uncertainty in the U.S. economy. Fed policymakers said they expect the economy to be weaker this year than previously thought. They also forecast inflation to be higher this year. The announcement comes as President Donald Trump wages a chaotic trade war, cuts government funding, axes thousands of federal workers. That aggressive agenda has caused many businesses and consumers to pause as they assess the impact. U.S. stocks were higher Wednesday after the Federal Reserve announced its decision to hold rates steady. The Dow rose 230 points, or 0.56%. The broader S&P 500 rose 0.8%. The NASDAQ Composite rose 1.2%. Now, the three major indexes held on to their gains, edged higher after they had started to slide in the early afternoon ahead of the Fed's announcement. The Fed's decision to hold rates steady was in line with investors' expectations. Fed officials forecasted 2 rate cuts this year, according to projections, holding that outlook steady. One analysis shows that if Donald Trump continues on his path with the economy, a recession will happen. Another area that Donald Trump has no clue about what to do. He wings it. He plays it by ear. He goes at situations with a whim. And that's not what this country needs right now. Voters demand answers at town hall meetings. And not just Republican politicians who are facing this, but Democrats as well. Senator Mark Kelly, Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona were part of this anger and despair from voters. Voters are turning out at town halls and holding the politicians' feet to the fire. We see this with Republican constituents asking the senators and congressmen and representatives, what are you doing about Donald and his delusional ideas? But in the case of the Democratic side, people are hearing comments from Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego saying, we need to do better. We need to take a different approach. Please get out there and, make your opinion heard. Call your senators and congressmen and send emails, etc. And the basic response from the Democratic voters about what's said that we need to do better? Are you frigging kidding me? We don't want lame-ass answers like that from you, the senators or congresspeople. We need action. We need you to stand up and do something concrete. Do you have any plans at all? This is what the Democratic voters are asking their representatives. Some light at the end of the tunnel. Voters from all sides are getting pissed off about Donald, the delusional king. Israel launches first ground offensive since Gaza ceasefire collapse, partially recapturing key area. The Israeli military said Wednesday that it had launched and targeted ground activities in Gaza, partially recapturing a key area in the territory, a day after launching an aerial bombardment of the strip that shattered the 2-month-old ceasefire with Hamas. The operation followed Israel's renewed bombardment of Gaza the day before, shattering the fragile ceasefire with Hamas. Israel accused Hamas of repeatedly refusing to release hostages and rejecting offers from mediators. Hamas, in turn, blamed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of unilaterally upending the truce and putting hostages at risk of an unknown fate. Prime Minister Netanyahu faced fury from protesters outside Israel's parliament, the Knesset in Jerusalem, a day after he resumed the war in Gaza, shattering the 2-month-old ceasefire with Hamas. On Highway 1, the main road connecting Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, protesters held a banner reading, "The future of the coalition or the future of Israel." The banner underlined a message delivered by thousands of people to the capital on Wednesday that over nearly 18 months of war and fragile ceasefires, Netanyahu continues to prioritize his political survival over the security of his country, the lives of Israeli hostages, and those of Palestinians in Gaza. The anger in those accusations was palpable on Wednesday, just a day after Israel bombarded Gaza, killing more than 400 people, injuring hundreds more, according to Gaza's health ministry, marking one of the war's deadliest days. This is fragile. We knew it's fragile between Israel and Hamas, and I don't see a lasting peace with what's going on. This is going to drag on and get deadlier. U.S. Institute of Peace sues Trump administration after DOGE takeover. You have to hear this story if you haven't caught this. The U.S. Institute of Peace has filed a suit against the Trump administration, stand in line, after the Department of Government Efficiency's takeover of the independent organization and gutting of its board. A lawsuit filed Tuesday in D.C. District Court seeks the immediate intervention of this court to stop defendants from completing the unlawful dismantling of the Institute and irreparably impairing plaintiffs' ability to perform their vital peace promotion and conflict resolution work as tasked by Congress. Now, DOGE personnel showed up at the USIP building, demanded that the staff leave. DOGE claimed that they were now in charge. So, USIP staff said, I don't think so. They called the DC police to tell them what was happening, that people were trying to take over the building and they had no right to. USIP had every right to do that, to call the police. The DC police officers arrived on the scene and took the side of DOGE and came in and removed the staff of USIP from the building. Now, that dramatic escalation followed the Trump administration's Friday gutting of the organization's board. Now, the Trump administration has faced several losses in the courts. USIP, which works to resolve conflict, is not, repeat, not a federal agency. It was created by Congress as a nonpartisan, independent body in 1984, and USIP owns and manages its headquarters. A declaration filed as part of the lawsuit from the Institute's chief security officer alleges that one USIP employee who possesses the technological capability to access the infrastructure and to grant others access was traveling to Washington, D.C. at the behest of DOGE in order to access the infrastructure, grant access to DOGE as soon as the evening of March 18, 2025. An independent agency calls the D.C. police, and the D.C. police takes the side of DOGE. Another memorandum of support states that USIP also has reason to believe that defendants or those working in concert with them are currently in the USIP building, causing physical damage to the premises and physically accessing and disposing of USIP financial records. This is a blatant flaunting of the rule of law. DOGE has no rights to this agency, and yet the D.C. Capitol Police helped them, along, by the way, with FBI agents. Helped them because they got a call from the DOJ saying, we have control, we have the rights, please remove the staff from USIP, help us, DOGE, and the D.C. Police did. And finally, prepping goes mainstream. I want all of the Wolfpack listeners to pay close attention to the following news story. Very important. Listen carefully what's happening. France, the country France, is going to distribute survival manuals to prepare households for emergencies, including armed conflict. France is preparing to distribute a survival manual to every household to help citizens prepare for imminent threats, including armed conflict on French soil. The survival manual aims to encourage citizens to develop their resilience in the face of different crises. A spokeswoman for Prime Minister François Bayrou told CNN on Wednesday. This includes natural disasters, technological and cyber incidents, health crises like COVID-19, and security crises like terrorist attacks and armed conflict. Repeat, armed conflict, she said. If approved by Bayrou, the 20-page booklet will be delivered to households before this summer. The French plan follows updates to similar booklets issued to millions of households in Sweden and Finland, which include instructions on how to prepare for the effects of military conflicts, communication outages, power cuts, as well as extreme weather events. The new booklet will be similar in content to a French government website launched in 2022 that provides advice on how to prepare for an emergency. The manual will be divided into 3 sections, offering practical advice on how to protect yourself and loved ones in the face of immediate danger. Among the recommendations will be having a list of emergency contacts, fire service, police, ambulance, knowing which radio channels to tune into, and ensuring that all doors are shut in the event of a nuclear accident. The manual will also outline ways to contribute to the defense of the community, such as volunteering for reserve units or local firefighting groups. The booklet will recommend all households in France have a survival kit, including 1.6 gallons of bottled water, a dozen tins of food, batteries, a flashlight in case of power outages. It will also advise citizens to buy medical supplies, such as paracetamol, compresses, and saline solution. It's very important to be prepared for a crisis, and I think the government is taking the right steps. Moussa Saki, a 19-year-old restaurant server in Paris, told CNN. I'm not worried about a war on French soil, but people need to know what to do just in case, he said. Basic things like medicine and food should be given to every household, he added. Corinne Langlois, 56, remains skeptical about the likelihood of armed conflict in France. I don't think there will be a war. It's not President Emmanuel Macron's role to intervene between Trump and Putin. There are other matters that require urgent attention here in France, Langlois said. We survived COVID. We will manage it if something else happens, she added. Now, Laurie Morgue de Aljou, a 25-year-old primary school teacher, describes herself as anti-war, but thinks the manual makes sense from a standpoint of prevention. Nordic countries like Sweden and Denmark are psychologically more prepared than France. And having a basic knowledge of what you need to survive, like knowing how to handle electricity, is important in terms of risk management, she said. However, she noted that a manual alone may not be enough. Psychological safety matters, and a piece of paper won't provide that. We need training, she said. Engagement can also mean joining associations such as the reserve forces, she said. We are doing everything we can to ensure citizens are ready to respond in the event of a crisis, she added. Early this month, Macron announced a major overhaul of France's security forces, including plans to increase the number of operational reservists from 40,000 to 100,000 by 2035. During a visit to a military base in eastern France on Tuesday, he said additional measures on military capabilities, investments, and equipment would be announced in the coming weeks. Our country and our continent must continue to defend themselves, equip themselves, and prepare if we want to avoid war, Macron said. This is the choice we have made, will continue to make. No one can say what will happen in the months and years to come. So, Wolfpack listeners, what has this got to do with you? Because I know a lot of Americans, not all, I don't know all, a lot of Americans, that's over there, has nothing to do with us. We don't care. But I wanted you to listen for a reason, okay? A major country, France, a major country is prepping their citizens for armed conflict. The United States is not going to do that because Donald Trump doesn't want anyone to be in control or be prepared for any takeover America by himself and Musk. So if a major country is thinking about this, what are we doing? What does this say about the state of affairs because of Trump's actions and the world at large? Are you, the listeners here, prepping and preparing for emergencies? Look, this is not some silly question I'm asking you. France is preparing. Sweden and Finland did this. What does it tell you? I repeat, Donald Trump, crazy, off the rails, Musk, doing whatever the hell he wants. A second billionaire now joining Musk with DOGE. Okay? So are you preparing? My girlfriend and I have been doing this for many years. And not to sound like doomsday lunatics, but to be prepared. And it's helped us out many times when the electric went out, weather events happened in Arizona, huboobs, monsoons, economic stress, loss of income, etc. Ask yourself as a listener of this podcast a simple question. Are you prepared, and are you confident enough that Donald Trump won't cause any more destruction to our country? I know what the answer should be from all of you. Water, food, communication. Are you doing anything to give yourself an emergency supply? Look, I know of 2 listeners personally who are taking these steps. I doubt any of the rest of you listening are doing anything. And I'm not being snotty. I'm not trying to be a jerk to you. I'm stating a simple fact of my belief. Send me your comments. How do you feel about this with what France is doing? Are you taking any steps at all to protect yourself and your family as our country crumbles further into dust with Donald and Musk's actions? I certainly hope so. Send me your comments, Wolfpack listeners, on this or anything else. Say hello. You've been silent too long. I know you're busy and overwhelmed. But send feedback my way. I'd like to engage with you and hear what's on your mind. And please check out my Substack that I just started up again. You can find it on Substack under Jeff Allen Wolf, The Wolf's Den. Or you can contact me and I'll send you a direct link. I'll be back again in 2 days. This is a world gone mad. I'm Jeff Allen Wolf, and without your comments and feedback and engagement, I'm sitting in a room talking to myself. Stay hopeful.